In the summer of 1089, thousands of people filled the streets of Paris. Many of them were hungry, some were angry. Most had no idea they were about to witness the collapse of a political system that had dominated France for generations. At the center of that system stood a king who believed the crisis could still be managed. Around him stood nobles determined to protect their privileges. And beyond the walls of palaces and government buildings lived millions of ordinary people who felt increasingly ignored by the people making decisions. France was still one of the most powerful countries in Europe. Its population was large, its army was respected. From outside, the kingdom appeared stable, but appearances can be deceptive. Years of financial problems had pushed the government toward bankruptcy. Bad harvests had driven food prices higher. Families that already struggled to make ends meet found themselves spending most of their income simply trying to buy bread. At the same time, many French citizens were beginning to question whether the existing system was fair. Why should some groups enjoy privileges while others carried most of the burden? Why were ordinary people expected to solve a crisis they did not create? And why did the government seem incapable of fixing problems that they had been growing for years? Those questions did not emerge overnight, but in 1789 they could no longer be ignored. What followed would transform France and leave a lasting mark on the modern world. But before the revolution could begin, the kingdom first had to face the reality. Its leaders had spent years trying to avoid. France was running out of money and time. The financial crisis facing France was not the result of a single mistake. It was the consequences of decades of spending war and poor management. Successive governments had borrowed enormous sums of money. Wars were expensive. Maintaining a large military was expensive. Supporting alliances abroad was expensive. And France had done all three. By the late 18th century, the government owed more money than it could realistically repay. Officials understood that something had to change. Taxes needed to be reformed. Revenue needed to be increased. But every proposed solution created new problems. Those with wealth and influence were often the same people capable of blocking reforms. As a result, the burden continued falling on ordinary citizens. For many people living in towns and villages, politics remained a distant concern. What mattered was survival. Could they afford food? Could they pay their rent? For modern audiences, it can be difficult to understand just how important bread was in 18th century France. It was not simply one food among many. When bread became expensive, everything else became a luxury. People waited in long lines, arguments broke out, frustration spread, and as economic conditions worsened, anger began looking for a target. Many found the target in the monarchy. For many citizens, this felt like an opportunity, perhaps meaningful. Reform was finally possible. Perhaps the kingdom could solve its problems peacefully. At first, there was a genuine optimism. Representatives arrived carrying lists of grievances gathered from the communities across the country. People wanted fairer taxation, they wanted greater political participation, they wanted accountability. What they received instead was deadlock. Disagreements quickly emerged over how decisions should be made, who truly represented France, who should hold power, and who had the right to decide the nation's future. The political crisis deepened. Outside the government, chambers, public interest grew, newspapers discussed every development. Rumors spread rapidly. The atmosphere became increasingly tense. Many people sensed that the country was approaching a turning point. The only question was, what form the turning point would take? During July 1789, fear spread through Paris. Stories circulated that troops might be used against political reformers. Whether every rumor was true hardly mattered. People believed something dangerous was coming. Crowds gathered, weapons were sold, tensions filled the city. Then attention turned toward the fortress known as the Bastille. The prison itself held little strategic importance. Very few prisoners were inside. Its significance was symbolic. For generations, it had represented royal authority. When the fortress fell, News traveled rapidly across France. The event immediately took on a meaning larger than the building itself. Supporters viewed it as a victory. Critics saw it as a warning. Either way, everyone understood that something fundamental has changed. Political disagreement had become a revolution, and once that process began, controlling it would prove nearly impossible. The months that followed brought change at a remarkable speed. Institutions that had existed for centuries suddenly appeared vulnerable. Old privileges disappeared. Long-standing assumptions were challenged. New political ideas entered public debate. For many people, the revolution represented hope. They imagined a society that would be more fair and more representative. Yet, expectations often rise faster than reality. Economic problems remained. Food shortages did not magically disappear. Political factions began competing with one another. Different groups supported different divisions of France's future. What had initially appeared to be a united movement gradually became a collection of competing movements. Each believed it understood the revolution's true purpose. Each believed its opponents threatened that purpose. And each became increasingly unwilling to compromise. At the center of events stood a monarchy that seemed increasingly disconnected from reality. The king struggled to regain public confidence. Every decision was scrutinized. Every hesitation became evident, at least in minds of critics, that the government lacked direction. There came a moment to change everything. The royal family attempted to leave Paris. The plan failed. For many citizens, the message was clear. If the king intended to abandon the country during a crisis, how could he still claim to represent it? Trust collapsed. Support for the monarchy weakened dramatically. The possibility of preserving the existing system began to disappear. France was moving toward a future without a king. As events unfolded inside France, neighboring governments watched with concern. Many rulers feared the revolutionary ideas could spread beyond French borders. Tensions increased. Eventually, war followed. The conflict transformed the revolution. Military defeat created panic. Victory created confidence. Political leaders argued over how it is the best to protect the nation. Fear became a powerful force. In uncertain times, people often search for enemies. France was no exception. Suspicions grew. Accusations multiplied. The line between genuine threats and political rivals became increasingly difficult to distinguish. The revolution was entering its dangerous phase. The execution of the king shocked Europe. But it did not bring stability. Instead, political divisions. Leaders believed extraordinary measures were necessary. The result was a period remembered as the Reign of the Terror. Arrest became common. Trials moved quickly. Execution became part of daily life. The guillotine stood at the center of public attention. What made this period especially unsettling was its unpredictability. People often struggled to know where the boundaries were. Views considered acceptable one month could become dangerous the next. Former allies became enemies. Prominent revolutionaries found themselves accused by fellow revolutionaries. Fear spread throughout the society. The revolution that had promised freedom was increasingly associated with suspicion of violence. Eventually, even powerful figures within the government became nervous. No one appeared completely safe. The atmosphere of fear that had consumed the country was now consuming the responsible for creating it. Political alliances shifted, support disappeared one by one. Leading figures lost influence, some lost their lives. The terror finally came to an end. But the damage remained. France had survived, yet many citizens were exhausted. Years of uncertainty, violence and political conflict had left deep scars. People wanted stability, they wanted order, and increasingly willing to support anyone capable of providing it. While politicians argued in Paris, a military officer was building a reputation on distant battlefields. He was ambitious, confident, remarkably successful. His name was Napoleon Bonaparte. At first, few imagined he would dominate French politics, yet his victories made him famous. His popularity grew, and as the public confidence in civilian government declined, his opportunities expanded. By the end of the decade, he would seize power and bring the revolutionary era to a close. The monarchy was gone, the old order was gone, but France had not become the stable republic many revolutionaries once imagined. Instead, it entered a new chapter, and a man who soon became one of the most influential leaders in world history.